Shalom, 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 shalom. First and foremost, giving infinite praises, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua Ba'ashem, for Hakodash, giving double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone and Shalom, and salutation to all you Sensei Akim across the four winds, pushing this truth with sincerity of heart. I'm your fellow servant, Kasamagan from the DC camp, coming at you through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua Ba'ashem, Hakodash, for the elect. Now, in this lesson of exhortation, I want to go into a topic that has to do with spiritual funk. And I noticed that's a spirit that's going around heavy as of late. Especially, I don't, this winter, I've noticed that, man, it's a spirit I can see not only on myself and other brothers, and this is a lesson to really inspire, Lord willing, inspire the hopeful elect to continue to power through the spiritual funk, and being able to understand, what it is, what's happening, um, the correlation between your emotions and passion and your faith, all right, and how these two are not always on the same, and that they're not always in the same space. And when they're not always in the same space, that's when you get that friction, that funk in your spirit. All right, so it's very important to be able to articulate, your emotions, man. That's what it means to be rational. All right, because people always talk about this person is emotional and this emotional, this. Um, you know, Being rational means you're able to regulate your emotions. You understand what you're going through. All right, being overly emotional means you're not able to regulate your emotions. You don't know what the hell's going on. Now, a spiritual funk is a period of spiritual dryness or stagnation characterized by a lack of joy or feeling disconnected from faith despite knowing what is true. All right, so that's what it means to go through a spiritual funk. And all of us have gone through this from the top to the bottom. If you really sincere in this gospel, you're gonna go through spiritual funks. All right, it's just a part of it. You just gotta power through. All right, and we're gonna bring precepts that shows men that went through spiritual funks, and precepts that remind you to help you power through it. All right, it says it is a feeling of listlessness and melancholy that can manifest as lack of motivation for spiritual practices like prayer or Bible reading. So have you ever been in a situation where normally you know to pray, but you don't pray as much as you're supposed to. You don't read as much as you're supposed to, right? And you kind of you're just in a you're just down bad. Like you're not making your lessons at the rate that you're supposed to. That's because you're in a spiritual funk, all right? And that's why you don't have that motivation to do what you've been doing. But the thing is with experience, having gone through these spiritual moments, those lows, right? Once you power through, there's always a bounce back, right? If you trust in your whole body, you're gonna bounce back, but you gotta power through it. All right, you gotta sit on it. You gotta meditate. All right, meditate, man. Very important. Get in tune with your emotions, and make sure your emotions, which really is your passion, is completely aligned with the faith. All right, because a lot of times, man, like it says right here, it says, check this out. It says this can happen when emotions don't align with your belief. All right, so basically, is that your passion for Yahweh by Shemel Shai, and you know what we're fighting for. All right, and we know that it's all about the glory of Yahweh by Shemel Shai, and Yahweh Shai's kingdom being established. It's about the elect being delivered. It's about the downfall of our enemies, beginning with Esau, Edom, and the rest of the nations, the heathens, and it's about that. And we are passionate about that, and we believe. So sometimes your passion, aka emotions, don't align. Meaning the faith part, the long suffering part, the patience part. All right. The main reason why you're going through a spiritual funk is because that attribute called patience and long suffering. That is where you're hurting. All right, because your passion, your emotions, basically your spirit wants it to happen, the glory to happen now, basically yesterday. All right, and because it hasn't happened, it's a sense of disappointment. All right, but so you have to really go back to the drawing board. You have to meditate and realign your passion with your faith, knowing that at the end of the day, it's about he that endureth to the end. It's about long suffering. All right. So now it says, and the feeling can be difficult to shake off and lacks a specific cause. It says what it feels like. It says a feeling of heaviness, a sense of being spiritually bummed out, or having a heavy spirit. All right, those are symptoms, and I can attest to this. It says disconnection from joy, a loss of joy in your faith, or feeling disconnected from a higher power, even if you intellectually know it's not true. Right? Sometimes again, that's where you kind of get worried. Oh man, is the spirit leaving me? Is the Lord not dealing with me? What's going on? It's not that the Lord is not dealing with you. It's not that the spirit is leaving you. What it is that your emotions, your passion, right? Uh, um, you need to regulate your emotions and your passion. Meaning, how you want the glory to happen. Your spirit wants the glory to happen, but it hasn't happened, and you have to face the reality that it's not here yet, and you have to continue to fight and continue to move forward. All right, and you have to clear your mind. You know what I'm saying? Clear your mind, your heart from any distractions, and tell remind yourself that this is the long game. This is a marathon. This is not a 100 meter or 40-yard dash. All right. It says stagnation. All right, stagnation. Spiritual practices like reading the Bible or praying feel empty or ineffective. I've been there. I've been in those places where it's like you reading the scriptures. I would read 3 chapters. I'm just in a bad place, and I would read 3 chapters. If you ask me, if I got anything, ask me any questions about the 3 chapters that I read, and I would not be able to because I'm not there. Like I'm reading, but you're just going through emotions because you're down bad. You have to get yourself right through prayer, through just powering through. But these are the things that happen. It happens to men of the Lord. All right, but you have to do it. That's why you still read. But you're not gonna get no true understanding of what you're reading because you're not really there at that moment. You're like a child that's pouting because his pops, his father that promised them a gift. That gift hasn't been given yet. You know what I'm saying? So you basically your spirit is pouting like. So that's what's going on. It says spiritual practices. It says stagnation. Spiritual practices like reading the Bible or praying feel empty or ineffective. It feels. It doesn't mean that it's true. It just feels like that. Why? Because your emotions, your passions, they're not regulated. All right. So it's important that you are able. That's why you got to know yourself. Yahushua said, "Know you not yourself, so that you reprobate." You got to know yourself. The scripture says, "A wise man understandeth his way." Understand who you are, how you move. Understand and be in tune with yourself and the thing, and know when your passion, aka emotions, is not aligned with the faith and the gospel. So you're gonna have to go back and meditate and make sure those two are on the same space. All right. It says restlessness and sadness, a feeling of spiritual turmoil, sadness and restlessness. All right. Which man, listen. That's why again, me, going to the gym. That's one of the things that I do. Because remember, in this gospel, you have to be spiritually strong, mentally strong, and it's also good to be physically strong to a certain extent, in the sense that mind, body, the spirit, mind, and body. All right, the mental part, pushing yourself, whatever hobby that you do, get out and do it. Whatever, if it is fishing, whatever it is, like go to those places where you know the result that you're gonna get because you need to see results. All right, you need to see results, and when you go out and let's say you hit a new PR, you feel good about yourself. Yeah, it's not necessarily the glory. It's not the glory. It's not the kingdom being established. The house is not that's not here, but at least you get that feeling of okay, I've accomplished something. Now you start to get back in a winning winning spirit. All right, things are moving forward. All right, and then you're gonna, the Lord is gonna, deal with you, and you're gonna go right. He gonna send you right back to that space when you're gonna, prayer and studying and so on and so forth. All right. I'm just again, this is just to help because I know brothers is going through it. Um, and I've gone through it so many times that I'm well aware when I'm in a spiritual funk, and I'm not sitting there like, oh yeah, the Lord's going to remove this. I used to think like that when I was younger in the truth, because it was scary because the spirit can be removed from you at any time. But being in a spiritual funk is different than just completely going off and the Lord not dealing with you. All right. Um, it says lack of motivation and inability to pinpoint a specific cause, but feeling stuck in a persistent state of mind. All right. It says how to navigate it. Now, this is some of the things that they have. I gave brothers some of the examples of how I do it. It says be honest with the Most High. It says be honest with the Most High. Confess what you're feeling to the Most High, as He already knows and understands. Which I do that. You know what I'm saying? I constantly, I'm not going to say, but we all have our own relationship with Yahweh Bashim Shah and our own way of communication with the Lord. You must establish a line of communication with Yahweh Shah. You must be able to do that. All right? It's critical, and it happens through prayer. Speak to the Lord. Don't just pray. The Lord doesn't like elongated, long ass prayers most of the time, but there's a time and a place for everything. There's a time where you have to pray and you have to talk about details that He already knows. Even though He already knows, you know that you know that He knows that you know that He knows, but He still wants to hear you say it. Because that establishes a line of communication that establishes the fact that you believe in Him and you trust in Him, and you need Him, to help you get out of this funk. All right, because you want to do the right thing, you want to push this word. All right, but you're just down bad right now, man. All right, pray that the Lord, help you regulate your emotions so you can get back to work. All right, talk to a friend. All right, the scripture speaks about communication. It's critical and everything. The scripture said and everything for getting not to communicate. So you have to talk. That's why we have brothers. There is such a thing as misery loves company. We are all miserable, but because we're all miserable together, it's a relief. It's not a relief in a negative way, but it makes us feel like, okay, well, you know what, damn. Because sometimes you man, this man, sometimes man, you think you're going through something and you talk to a brother and you like, oh shit, it could always be worse. All right. It says engage with scripture, read familiar passages that have brought you comfort before, or try different versions of the Bible. Very critical, which we're going to do that. I'm going to do that. We're going to read scriptures that's helped us get through, and then we're going to use different versions of, not just read the King James, because sometimes when the message is repetitive, it's kind of hard. Anybody that plays sports knows. You listen to sometimes certain coaches will say certain things like, man, I gotta hear from somebody else. All right, it's just like that. It's the nature. It says listen to worship music. Put on music that you've enjoyed in the past to help lift your spirit. Which I do that. Sometimes you gotta get off that rap shit and put on some smooth things, man. We ain't always gotta be on that rap crazy shit. There's a moment in time for that, man. That shit is not gonna make you feel better about yourself, man. Um, it says remember it's temporary. Very important. Remember that it's temporary. I always say to myself, this too shall pass. The feeling that I'm feeling right now is gonna pass. And at this point, I'm just like, remember, it's always like this. At some point, it's gonna pass, and then eventually it does. All right, eventually it does. Consider its source. Sometimes a funk can be a call to return to faith if you've been neglecting it. You see that? Seek silence, spend quiet time in the Most High's presence, and listen. So yeah, man, this is. I hope this is really helpful. Now let's get some precepts. This is Romans chapter 8, verse 20 in the NIV, and it states, "For the creation was subjected to frustration." All right. So the creation is who? It's the Israelites, primarily the elect in this case, but the nation of Israel. We are being made subject to frustration. The reason why you're in a spiritual funk is because your spirit is frustrated. All right, it's frustrated. Why? Because you ain't winning right now. You're losing. You're working hard, and you worked hard, and you want to reap the results of the hard work, but it's not gonna happen now, and you got to deal with it. And you got to accept it. That's the reason why you're in a spiritual funk. That's why you're frustrated. All right. It said not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, and hope. All right. So that hope is your only way out, man. Hoping in the Lord is your only way out. Verse 21, that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of the Most High. We know that the whole creation, meaning the whole nation, has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth, right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, meaning the hopeful elect, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have? All right, so we don't have. That's why we hope. But because we don't have, we're also frustrated. So it goes hand in hand, and you always have to make sure your emotions, your feelings, and on a proper place. And every so often they won't be in a proper place, and that's when you get into that spiritual funk. All right. But as you get used to it, you get used to going in. You're gonna also get used to going out of it. All right, through the spirit. That's the Psalms 38:6. It says, "I am troubled. I am bowed down greatly. I go mourning all the day long. For my loins are filled with a loathsome disease, and there is no soundness in my flesh." So even David was constantly going through it. It says, "I am feeble and sore broken. I have roared by reason of the disquietness of my heart." The Lord, it says, "Lord, all my desire is before thee, and my groaning is not hid from thee." See, desire is very important. And when your desire is not being established, it's going to happen at times. You're gonna get into a spiritual funk. All right, but you got to power through it. But there's a way to go about doing it. All right, there's a way to go about doing it. All right, it says, "My heart painteth, my strength faileth me. As for the light of mine eyes, it also is gone from me." All right, so you have multiple men that went through this, man. The spiritual funk is nothing new. It's also a great sign, actually, that you are in the truth. It's just not a pleasant aspect of being in the truth, right? But it is the reality. It's proof that you are in the truth. So don't look at the spiritual funk as you not being in the truth. It's a great sign that you are in the truth. You're in the truth so much that because things haven't materialized in your favor, you're hurt. All right, you're emotionally, hurt. Plain and simple. Job 23:1, it says, "Then Job answered." Oh, the subtitle. Job says he longs for the Most High. Then Job answered and said, Even today is my complaint bitter. My stroke is heavier than my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his feet." Now, Job is saying, "Man, I want to come close to the Lord because I'm getting my ass handed to me, man. I'm down bad." All right. It says, "I would order my cause before him and fill my mouth with arguments." Meaning what? I'm gonna complain like hell. All right. "I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say unto me. Will he plead against me with his great power? No, but he will put strength in me." You see that? It says, there the righteous might dispute with him. So should I be delivered forever from my judge. Behold, I go forward, but he is not there. He is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive him. All right. That's when you feel you don't you kind of down. You're spiritually just off, right? And hold on. And it says, verse 10, "But he knoweth the way that I take. When he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold." All right. See, the Lord knows the way that we take, but if we being tried, if we being tried to be turned into gold. All right. Now, this is one of the things that you must do. That's why it always goes back to this. Job 7 verse 11. It says, "Therefore I would not refrain my mouth." It says, "Therefore I would not refrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit." All right. So you got to speak when you have that anguish. You have to speak. Talk to a brother. Um, definitely speak to yourself. It's critical. Speak to yourself so you can regulate your emotions and make sure your emotions are in line with your faith, with your belief, and then definitely make a lesson, man. All right. That's what Job is talking about. Therefore, I would not refrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. All right. So every time you make a lesson, it's a complaint that you put out there. It's not necessarily you making a lesson to complain, but you could make a lesson about prophecy, about how to, bringing news and so on, how the Lord, promised to deliver us and destroy this place, and that's a form of complaint as well. All right. Now let's conclude with this. Sirach chapter 2 verse 1. My son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation. Set thy heart aright and constantly endure, and make not haste in time of trouble. Cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased in thy last end. Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state. All right, that spiritual low, that funk. For gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. All right, so again, as you already know, Sirach the second chapter is definitely your go-to. But this is the lesson that I had of exhortation, man, for the brothers. Sincere argument is gospel, hopeful elect. And there's few sisters that do listen that are also catching hell and groaning as well. Hopefully you were edified as well as I was. Kar halam la Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahushua Ba'Shem, Dash. Double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone and Shalom and salutation to all you sincere Akim across the four winds, presenting his truth with sincerity of heart. Because I'm God from the DC camp. Shalom.